And good afternoon, it's Sunday afternoon, it is 3 o'clock GMT, it's the 17th of January 2016, and you're listening to another episode of This Week in New Eve and TWiNE here on Eve Radio, basically where I talk about the week in Eve with a guest, and this week's guest is none other, as you can see on the Twitch feed, the man, the legend, the myth, the lunchbox from Crossing Zebras, Xander Fina, how you doing, sir?
Thank you very much for having me on, Wiggles. It's lovely to be here, as always.
Well, you know, got to do it. Got to keep everyone in the know and the stuff, and we talk about the stuff. And we, it's been an interesting week in Eve news, so we thought, you know what, we'll have a chat about stuff. So yeah, how's your week been? I know you've just come back from offshore, haven't you? Because people who are not in the know, you work offshore on an oil rig, so for 3 weeks at a time, you sometimes got really rubbishy internet connection. You're like, I could send a tweet, and it takes me an hour to send that tweet because it's still sending.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. It kind of varies from rig to rig. I'm not on a set rig at any one time, so I could be on a rig with okay internet or not so good internet. Thankfully, the place I was, that last trip was reasonably good. I was able to FaceTime home from my cabin and stuff like that, so it wasn't too bad.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
It's
lovely to be here. I think there's two kind of key points here. The first is that it's nice to be on somebody else's show because I don't need to edit it afterwards. I don't need to bother with posting it or anything like that. And secondly, it's lovely to think that somebody still cares about my opinion. It's a bit of an ego trip, you know.
I always care about your opinion. And also, editing. This show is literally me. As we're now live. I'm recording it. It's going out live. It's live on. We're live on Eve Radio. For the audio. We're also live on Twitch for video if you want to watch myself and Xander, so yeah, we're here. But also it goes out as a podcast, so while we're broadcasting live, I record the podcast version, and when I'm done of the talk show, it's literally stop the recording, go into Adobe Audition, get the MP3 file, cut the bit out at the beginning I don't need, cut the bit out at the end I don't need, upload it as a podcast. It's normally out before the show's over, so that's how it is. But anyway, let's get into the news of this week. The big news of this week, which we're going to spend a fair bit of today on, is the CSM 11 elections have the start point of the elections have now started, as in the candidacy period has opened. I want to say a little bit of controversy around some of the stuff with this initially, because there was a few things that were interesting, shall we say, Xander, with the changes to the white paper and changes to the ages. I talked about it with Bobman last week, because the official stuff has come out now. The age limit's been dropped to 18, which is a good thing, I think. I mean, initially, because there was always this thing, oh, well, it's the majority age of the limit where you are. No, just a flat rate of 18. If you're 18 and over, you can be on the CSM. Good, bad?
18, you're an adult in the vast majority of countries. My understanding was, and I could be wrong here, my understanding was that the 21 rule, as it was before, was kind of a holdover. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think it was something to do with the drinking age in Iceland.
Yes, it was. Yeah, because it's 20 or something out there, or I think it's the legality of the US as well, because the drinking age in most of the US is 21. So it's all things. But again, I was chatting with Bob Mom last week, and he said the thing is, though, if you go to an event in Iceland and you're under 18, or you're 18, the drinking age is 20, so you still can't drink at stuff, so you can't go to those events, but you can still do other stuff. So I think that's a good thing. Again, they changed the dates this year. We talked about that last week. But the white paper, which is the big thing, which me and you had a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter about, and there was a few people talking about it. The new version, here's the big thing. Here's the thing. It was a little bit further down. I'm just opening it up to check it. It was the exclusions. Where is it? I've got to find it now. I should have had this pre-prepared, but I didn't. Candidate requirements. To become eligible, blah, 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 90 days, CCP employees, ISD volunteers, CCP interns, CCP affiliates, CCP strategic partners, or employees of other gaming companies, games, gaming media, and family members of CCP are all ineligible to run for the CSM. Now, the bit that got me and you talking was the gaming media, sir, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty vague line, shall we suggest.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't have an issue with that being vague in and of itself. CCP needs to leave themselves some wiggle room with this kind of thing. But I think it's not a binary thing. Like, you don't have to be utterly, utterly vague and leave yourself loads of room. And you don't need to be utterly prescriptive and lay out exactly, case by case scenarios. There is a middle ground there, and I feel like we're probably a little bit too vague with this one, to say the least.
Yes, definitely. And again, they said we're going to get some clarification and all this on it. And again, there was the back and forth again with yourself, me, you, and there was a few others talking with Lilu back and forth all across Twitter and this and that. And again, massive shout out and props to Lilu. She's been amazing in what she's done. She's been out and said, okay, we're going to take this back and look at it. It was like, so, gaming media, what does that concern? They said, well, anything that doesn't cover Eve as such or something like that, and it's like, well, hold on a minute, so does technically TWiNE.com fall under that because they cover other things? Oh, and they also get some monetary gain from it potentially, and then the whole thing about like for example yourself with Crossing Zebras, you ran a couple of candidacy periods, you ran not last year, the year before, but running again, would that put you out of it, or would that put me out of it for Eve Radio or anyone like that? Because it's a monetary gain and stuff like that, and that's where the grey area was. Now, obviously, we shouldn't have to worry about that. It should be down to CCP to worry about that, and I know internally they probably will worry about that, and they will know what they consider gaming media, and anyone who applies and is eligible, they will say, sorry, you're not eligible. For example, let's take Kotaku or IGN. Anyone from that, yeah, they're straight out of that, aren't they? As a start, I guess.
There's a lot of things which are undefined here and problematic. What's an employee, for one? So is somebody an employee if they're paid in ISK? Is somebody an employee if they're paid in ISK and their writing is generating real pounds? Via Google AdSense or whatever. Is somebody an employee if they're generating ISK but the site is making real pounds and they're making those real pounds from another gaming company? What is gaming media? If you're covering Eve, you're gaming media, I guess, and you're only covering one game, but you're still gaming media. If you're covering other games, is that okay? Is it okay if you're covering other games and making money because of those other games? There's so many different layers. There's so many ambiguities. And I understand that they don't want to be too prescriptive, but it's caused me a lot of headache as somebody that runs an Eve Media website. I'm sure that you guys in Eve Radio have been discussing it from guys that might want to be standing and you don't know. The whole thing is just a little too muddy for my liking.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this myself. Again, because people have said to me, Wills, why don't you run for this? I mean, I went, well, I'd love to, but I don't have the free time to do it. That's the thing. I'm not going to delude myself and say, yeah, I could do it. I don't have the time. Simple and formal. I don't have the time to do it. But then again, well, could I run because of Eve Radio? Potentially. Could I run because of Total Eve and the new Eden update? Potentially. Could I run because I've done stuff in the past for other sites and stuff like that? We don't know. And this is where it all comes down. This is the little bit of the grey area. And like we were saying just before off air and that, it would have been nice for a little bit more, black and white in the line in the sand. Say, this is what you can't do. This is what you can do. And as I said, I'm sure internally at CCP they know this.
My guess in what they're trying to do with this, and this is purely guesswork on my behalf, and from speaking to other people as well who hold a similar opinion, my guess is they don't want CSM members who could be gaining financially from other video game companies, especially ones who might be making a competing product to EVE Online. That's my guess at where the line is. And the interesting thing is, if that's correct, and we don't know if that's correct, but if that is where the line is, you have to wonder about how it might affect certain people at, for example, TMC. I mean, that's the obvious one. And we know that they have received advertising funding from the guys that make H1Z1. But then the question is, who was making the money? it's there. I don't know how it's going to affect those guys, and I don't even know if that is what CCP is getting at here. But that would be my guess.
Yeah, it's all over the shop. But then again, they have to do these things because they need to cover the legality, the backside, and everything they need to cover. They need to do. So,
well, I mean, if somebody is working for a gaming website and they are financially benefiting from a competing product to EVE Online from that via that website, then that's a pretty serious conflict of interest. For somebody, you're saying that you're going to try and improve EVE Online, but on the other hand, you're taking advertising funds or whatever from a company making a competing product. There's a serious conflict of interest there. So
there is, yeah.
I can understand if that is what CCP are trying to do here. I can understand why that is, but the ambiguity is a serious problem for me.
Mm-hmm. See, in the Twitch chat, Big Country, former Eve Radio DJ, now over at thematani.com doing OpenCom show there live every week on a Thursday night. He says, this is specifically targeting Cyan because TMT deals with games outside, of course, of CCP. This is how a lot of people feel. Possibly, I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't know if it's specifically targeting him as an individual, or maybe a few other things, around them, and it does look a bit muddy. I think I agree, but we'll have to see how it goes, because I'm sure CCP will turn around and go, yeah, people like TMC, anyone who runs from the Goons who also works for TMC will be fine because they play the game. They're in the game. They're active players. If it's just, I don't know, Joe Blow who writes for IGN, who has an EVE account and would like to do it, well, possibly different. But then it gets down to CCP to decide, isn't it?
Yeah, and they definitely have to leave themselves the room to do a case-by-case thing. They have to leave themselves the room so that they can manoeuvre there. I don't expect them to be binary and giving us the rules for this sort of thing. But, yeah, a bit more clarity would be good. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, I think CSM 11 is going to be absolutely amazing on a whole number of levels. But before we even get there, I think it is going to be very interesting if certain TFC members, both incumbent and otherwise, are told, nope. I think that's going to be fascinating.
Exactly.
To watch from the outside.
Oh, definitely. I prefer watching different. That's the one of the reasons I love watching stuff from the outside. I prefer to watch it from the outside, other than get involved and then have to bite my tongue as much, and I can't sort of go, oh, I want to talk about this and that. It's just how it is. Other changes as well. Privacy. You no longer need to release your name if you want to run for CSM.
Yeah, I mean, so you constantly read on r/Eve, Kugu back in the day, Zulu, etc., etc. The stories about doxing are legendary. I never really had a problem with people knowing my real name. My life is not that interesting or that important that I care if somebody wants to dox me. I mean, I'm trying to think what they could do that would cause me... I mean, the worst thing they could do was maybe somehow get access to my bank account, and I know fine well that my bank would just fix that. I mean, the whole thought of my name being public was never an issue for me. Now I understand for other people that is a serious issue, and I understand that potentially really good candidates felt that they couldn't stand because they didn't want their name public. I just kind of think anybody that's desperate enough to want to dox you is probably going to be able to find your name without it being public on CSM anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I think somebody that's that determined that they want to hurt you out of game because of in-game actions is probably going to be able to get that information anyway if they try hard enough. I mean, unless you're the kind of person that completely abstains from social media or that, then they can probably track you down anyway. So who cares? But I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's a good change, and I think if it was a line in the sand for some people, if it was something that they that stopped them from standing for CSM, then it's a good change. But for me, I never cared about it. My name being public.
Well, exactly. Well, again, the other side of it is if you just go by your in-game name and that's all you're known as, your Twitter is just your in-game avatar. There's nothing personal on there and this and that. But it's like yourself and me. We both use our Twitters. They're our personal Twitters. They're not like an Eve-centric. It's like, oh, this is Wiggles. My name's on there. You know, that's how it is. I put personal stuff up there all the time, and that's how it is. I
mean, I'm friends with countless Eve players and devs on Facebook, for example. You know, I have family pictures on there. They share their real name. Obviously, I have their real name, and it's just not a big deal. I mean, with the greatest of respect, if I go to FanFest and have a beer with you, I'm not calling you Fanny McNutmuncher. I'm not doing that. I'm calling you
your name,
or Dave, or
Bob, or Jim,
or
exactly.
You know what I mean, I'm not going to call you, you know, Quiberius fucking something. I'm not, sorry, pardon my French. I'm not going to do. It's fine.
It's a mature rated show. We're allowed to swear.
I'm going to call you by your real name. So
exactly.
I think the whole thing about doxing is just a non-issue for me. I still think it's a good rule change. I still think it's something that.
Definitely. Big Country has also given you a little bit of interior decoration device. Says get a painting or something behind you.
Do you know, we moved into this house just before Christmas. Well, like the end of November, start of December. I'd give everybody the full tour, but I don't think they're going to be that interested. The wall behind me is pretty much the only wall that hasn't got
something on it.
But he's right, we do need to get something up there. But thanks for the interior decoration of this.
Well, you know what he does? He just puts a green screen behind him so he can be wherever he wants. It's just how it is.
I need to get a big green curtain or something behind me.
Well,
be in Hawaii or something.
I thought about it for this place here because again, I've moved in with my girlfriend now. This is the second show in here. We've been here 3 weeks, not 2 weeks. It'll be 3 weeks on Wednesday, and literally, it's like you can see my kitchen. You can see the kitchen behind us because I'm in the living room. It's an open plan kitchen living room, and then the wall that's here there's the wall of bedroom. It's a small 1-bedroom flat. Is what it is. It's a side of the postage stamp for London. And she's like, people say, and I've literally I put curtains up today, so I've done the curtains, and I'm like, you know what? I might just get a green screen, done, have it up, finished. But then I'm like, maybe, I don't know. It's just, I mean, who really cares? At the end of the day, it's just how it is. You watch
Big Country, clearly.
Well, yeah, but then he has that, and he also has him, and all of all the co-hosts that he has on there all have green screens, and the guests don't. And well, anyway, it doesn't really matter. Getting back to the CSM stuff, there is also, I said the names don't have to release names. Also, permanent attendees gone up to 4 seats from 2. That's a massive change, which means us as players and the rest of the player base have more power over voting their preferred candidate onto the CSM, and if they get one of the top seats, they're going to guarantee to go to all the summits, which is huge because being at the summit, as you've been there, you know, it's better than teleconferencing in, and it's one of those things you can teleconference in, you get your stuff, but you're there, you can get your point across, and you can look at someone and go, really, is that really what you want to do? No, just do it properly. Don't mess around or what, you know, like that. It's a massive, massive, massive change. I think that is.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, this was the permanent seat thing was something that was discussed extensively in the Winter Summit last year, CSM 9's Winter Summit that I was at. And I think the concern about increasing the seats was if you increase the seats to, say, 4, then the 10 people that are left are fighting over 6 spaces, 3 on each summit. I think they've changed the rules. So not only are they increasing the permanent seats to 4, my understanding is that they're going to take 10 CSM members out for each summit.
Up to 10 CSM members to each summit as needed. So if, for example, you don't need all 10, or not all 10 can go, only 7 or 8 can go, fine. But if 10 out of the 14 can go, great, off they go. Which is another good thing.
I think it's a good change. I think it gives more power to the people voting. It makes it more relevant. But also it means that more people are going to be at the summit, and you can do work, and there's a lot of really good work done outside of summit. There's a lot of really good work done by people phoning into summit, but there's very little that can compare to standing face to face with a dev and talking out an issue in a face to face manner. And actually, a lot of the work done at summits isn't done in the summit room as well. I mean, you go out for a drink afterwards, you go out for a meal with the devs, and you talk about stuff, and you have more time, you can flesh out ideas. Whereas at summit itself, you're kind of stuck to these kind of hour-long sessions, and stuff does get missed. So being in Iceland at CCP HQ, at Reykjavik, to be able to talk these things through is important. So I think that's a fantastic change for me.
It is a good change. And there was it's one where it says replacement mechanism. While it's been since we tried to the first replacement mechanism, they've resigned or removed. Now this process has been formalised and included in the white paper. So it basically says this is what happens. By leaving an empty chair on the council, they're not utilising the full potential of STV-based voting. Besides, having more delegates equals more feedback, so running short is not always the best option. This lets us reuse all the votes that were cast during the election. Now, obviously, we're running short at the moment, but that's because they're like, well, if we bring someone in, we've got to bring them up to speed. They're only going to be here for a couple of months and all this and all that. So going forward, I'm sure that, and there'll be a, it says in there removal, and I'm sure there'll be a cut-off date. They say, if we get to 3 months to the end of the term, we're not going to replace someone.
I heard a rumour about this,
Mm-hmm.
And it is just a rumour. It could be nonsense. I heard a rumour that there was a delay in kicking Manny off CSM 10 because if you remember, they'd already replaced 2 CSMs this term already.
Mm-hmm.
Gorga had been kicked for inactivity, and Core Blood Brother has stepped down because he felt he didn't have the time to dedicate to it. So we'd already had 2 replacements for CSM 10 already. I heard a rumour that they held off kicking off Manny to such a point where they wouldn't have to replace him because it was too close to the end of CSM 10's term, and the 2 names that were in the hat for being promoted were Bob Mom and Zanuria.
Bob Mon kind of said that last week as well, and I'm like, is that true? Is it a bit of BS? We don't know. The official stance is end of term. It goes, if a delegate decides to quit or has been removed from the council, the process for replacement will be initiated. A delegate who has left or been removed from the council will be excluded from the ballot list, blah, blah, blah. This process will only be undertaken if there are at least 3 release cycles left until the end of the current CSM term. 1 release cycle is defined as the period between 2 releases. The average time varies between 4 and 6 weeks. So basically, we're looking at 3 to 4 months.
Which makes sense, by the way.
Yes.
Which makes sense. I mean, there has to be a line in the sand whereby you just go, well, there's 17 days less of this council. There's no point in bringing somebody else on to replace him because there's not enough time left. I mean, it makes sense that you have a cut-off line. Where that line is can be debated, but there has to be a point where you just go, we'll just run short, because it's going to take too long to come up to speed. I know that Gorski, who's been on the last 2 CSMs, and he's been promoted up each time. That for him there has been a period where it wasn't so bad for 10 because obviously he was on CSM 9, but there is a period where you have to catch up, where you have to work out how it works, how the process works, how you deal with people, how you speak to people, and how you liaise. So I mean, I think there has to be a point where you just go, no, we'll run short.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it makes sense. And the end of term handover, delegates now have 1 month, 30 days to hand over the knowledge and experience to the new term. In which way the way this will be done will be determined by both retiring CSM and the new one. CCP does not police the handover, only supports the new representatives with requirements and tools. So basically it means more time to hand over to the next people coming in, which makes perfect sense. Which is good. And I just want to tie what we're talking about here to an article that was posted. There was 2 actually this week on CZ. An interview with Leela, which is a very, 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 very good interview. If people can check that out, the links will be in the show notes. They'll be posted live in game if you're listening live or on Twitch. They'll be there, or if you're listening in post, they will be in the show notes. Leela's interview was a very good and frank interview. I think it was just down to the earth. Some questions were asked. Epiphany asked some questions. She answered them, and that's how it was. And again, I've known Lilu for a little while. I've met her a few times, and she is just honest to goodness, in your face. That's how I'm going to tell it. She will say, look, that's this, that's that, blum blum blum. And if she can't answer it, she won't. I think.
Yeah, Lilu's amazing. I think she was a fantastic CSM coordinator for us on CSM 9. I've never had any CSM member say anything other than positive things about her and the work she does with CSM. I think it's interesting from that interview to hear from her that she does feel there is some damage that's happened between CSM and CCP. We don't obviously have the details of what's happened there. We know some of the public stuff. I mean, we know guys that have been kicked off for net activity. We know guys that have been kicked off for leaking. You know, that you don't need to be a genius to follow places like, I mean, Jesus, the CSM channel on TweetFleet Slack over the past couple of weeks has been amazing. So, I mean, I don't think you need to be a genius to read that there are issues beyond the kind of officially publicly known information. You know, there are issues going on between CSM and CCP at the moment. The great thing is CCP legally seems to feel that the damage can be repaired. I think that CSM 11 is going to be. I've said it already this recording, but I just think it's going to be amazing to watch. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they deal with what's went before.
The other good article up there, and another one this week, Reforming the CSM by Dan Knopf. I read through that and I was like, you know what? There's some really good points in there. There's some bits in there. The obvious sort of digs at, Gevlin and every day when I do the New Eden update, if there's a new Goblin article out, I say, oh, Comic Relief out from Goblin, and it's just what it is and stuff like that. But again, it's information out there that, there's bits about the NDA potentially, if you do, the whole thing is, do we need it, do we not need it, and that's something we could talk about for days on end. And I personally feel the NDA is valid and it needs to be there, because without the NDA there's enough that CCP can say to the public, and they do now with the Capital Focus Group, that stuff's out there, but the NDA allows a little bit more. Say, look, we're thinking about this. We're not 100% sure, but we're thinking about it. And it means that people don't have to run around and all that. It's just, I feel that's easier. Do you?
I think the NDA is vital. I mean, there are some things that CCP have had a reputation over past FanFests, for example. CCP had got known year after year for announcing things that never happened. They got a bad reputation for geeing up player expectations, announcing things that could happen, and as soon as people heard that something could happen, it was happening. As far as the players were concerned, this was something that was going to come, and everybody was getting excited about. And they ignored the fact that, well, maybe this isn't actually going to happen. The CCP, and there was mistakes on both ends there. There was mistakes from CCP perhaps releasing potential game ideas too early to a player base that would be really excited about it. And on the other hand, players weren't really listening when CCP said, look, this is just an idea, this is something we're considering.
Yeah.
And I think that if CCP want to speak frankly to a group of players about things they are thinking about doing that may not happen, you must have an NDA. That has to be there. There has to be a way for CCP to communicate with a group of knowledgeable players. This is something we've talked about internally. Do you think this is a good idea or not?
Exactly.
Doing that on the stage during a keynote at FanFest is not wise with our player base.
No.
And I think that you can't get rid of the NDA. On the other hand, I think that the CSM, in my opinion, is either going to die or it's going to really need to fundamentally change, like in quite a big, major way. I hope it doesn't die, because I think there's a lot of value in it. But I think as it currently is, it's not working. And I think looking at the way focus groups are working currently, I don't think that's the perfect solution, but it's probably there's probably a scale between the two. There's probably a sliding line between the two, and something needs to be figured out.
Definitely. And again, I'm just going to quote the very end of the article. It says, ultimately, we who elect the CSM dictates the usefulness of the CSM, boycotting and electing joke candidates because we feel the CSM has lost its effectiveness merely becomes self-fulfilling prophecy, as such candidates drive the organisation and direction so cynically assumed. Until CCP better engages the CSM, we still have the duty to elect serious candidates and do our part in shaping things for the better, in the hope that they eventually can make and meet this work halfway. The only way for the CSM to fail is to give up and stop trying to make it work, and that's, in a nutshell, exactly what you just said, and that makes perfect sense.
I mean, what I didn't understand from Dan's piece is who he thinks has announced for CSM 11, who he considers to be a joke candidate. I just couldn't. I couldn't read between the lines there at all. All I know is that every single CSM candidate beginning with X has always been a massive success. So I'm sure that will continue to be the case.
That bodes well. So basically, are you saying Zanuria 2016?
Listen, Trump 2016, Zanuria
2016.
Let's
Boris Johnson 2017 or a little bit later on, or whenever
Englandshire, who cares?
Yeah, Boris Johnson's a legend. He's like, oh, Boris Johnson, oiks, and runs around it. It's great. It's awesome like that. But again, some great writing there this week on CZ, and also we did have a very good interview. Just going to let people know with Willari, the creator of Dotland, because everyone uses Dotland every day. Every day, most people in Eve use Dotland. They're like, oh, it's great, it's right. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, so what happens when it goes down? Oh, yeah, well, this guy has to sort it out. And Daniel Willari, it's a great interview. I take your time, sit back, read it. It's a great thing. It just literally, again, good work there. It's just what it is for that. It's just really, really, really. And Dunk did a great write up on that. And it just talks about the whole thing and how Dotland are pushing forward with the new things like the single sign-on and the use of Crest and that sort of stuff, and integrating it into the site to show what can be done.
I met Willari at FanFest last year, and he had no idea. He had no idea who I was, and I'd had a couple of drinks, and I was just like drooling over him like a pathetic schoolgirl because I think they're. I mean, like the first external site you point anyone to in terms of EVE Online is almost certainly Dotland. It's like everybody uses Dotland. Everybody uses it. It's not like Killboards where there's a few different alternatives. Everybody uses Dotland, and that's it. There's different forums, there's different Killboard sites. Dotland is where you go to find out where you are in EVE.
Exactly.
It's the one place, and I just think he's created such a fantastic thing that CCP basically. Let's be honest. The work on the in-game map has been patchy because why would you spend time on the in-game map when Dotland exists?
Well, exactly. And the only reason you update the in-game map is because some people will do stuff in-game and get it done, and you make it look, to use a word, prettyful and nice looking so it can be used. And then they take hints from what Willari's done with the API and stuff like that and say, oh yeah, you can put the ADMs and that on there and look at this and that. Oh, we might tweak it and put it in there. We see how it goes. Stuff like that. Just, again, the community just does amazing things, and it's again sort of we've got two right here. You've got two figureheads of the community. You've got Xander, the guy behind Crossing Zebras, the one of the Raging Scotsmen who just literally would banter on for hours with his boyfriend, as people would say, but he's now not your boyfriend because he's married and whatnot, Mr. Jegelska, about stuff on the podcast. And you moved it in from just being a podcast into a site where you had some articles, and then they got bigger, and now you've got daily once a day magazine style articles, and you've got CZTV and stuff like that, and you're working with Nash from EVNT, loads of things going on there. And you got myself from Eve Radio, we do stuff like that, and I've branched out to do things like Total Eve and the New Eden Update and stuff like that, and it's these little things that the community build that makes the game better. Because as I said before, if we didn't have half the stuff, if we didn't have Killboards, if we didn't have Dotland or any of the news sites like TMC24, Crossing Zebras, or the blogs or podcasts, the game would be minuscule. The game would be smaller than it is now. It would be tiny, and the amount of players would be
It's difficult because CCP relies on all this community created content, and they can't control it. I mean, there's no way they can control it. So you see people talking. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion on TweetFleet Slack recently about moderation of both TweetFleet Slack and r/Eve, for example, and the ways that CCP communicate with players, because we all know that the Evo forums are terrible. They've always been terrible.
Yes.
You almost get the impression that CCP have just given up with them.
Yeah.
And players naturally gravitate to places such as r/Eve, TweetFleet, Failheap. People tweet fleet on Twitter, and as such, devs then move to those places too, because they know that they can get interesting discourse with players in those different kind of venues. So it's difficult because CCP in one way rely on us, the royal we here to create this content for players, but on the other hand, it reflects on them and they have no control over it, which I think is part of the reason, kind of going back full circle to the earlier discussion about these changes to the CSM rules and gaming media, and that I think it's them trying to take back a little bit of control, which is something that's always going to be difficult. But I think that's where they're going there.
Yeah. Nexus 7 in Twitch chat says, anyone know what expansion comes after Citadels? Have any details been announced? When would it be announced? Well, nothing's been announced yet. Citadels isn't even... We only know the basics of stuff. We know that Citadels are coming out. We know some basic capital changes. And literally we know some stuff. There's still a ton of stuff for us to know about what is going to happen in Citadel. And also, we don't even know when that's going to come out. Citadel is slated for release, in the spring of 2016, and spring can be anywhere up to the 21st of June or July or whatever it is when the summer solstice happens, using a Blizzard term there, because Blizzard do that. They say, but release in the spring, and it's all up to there. But we don't know, and I'm sure some of the CSM might know. When will the logistic capitals come out, Peanut PT? Citadel, when Citadel comes out and when they announce it, that's what will happen. I'm sure that they'll seed some of the stuff like books and that first, and maybe some of the blueprints for some of the stuff, but not all of it. But again, it's all, we need to wait and know. And remember, CCP are just coming off the back of the winter break. They're off the back of the winter break now. The new season of 07 starts as well soon, which is going to be interesting. And again, another thing of communication where we've talked about before. Communication from CCP has gone from being amazingly shit and terrible all the way to amazingly amazing, and all places in between, and they're just at that point where they're doing it right. So we will have to wait and see with those.
I'd be very surprised if Citadels isn't on or very near FanFest.
Yeah,
that's traditionally they generally like to keep their powder dry for a big release for FanFest.
Yeah,
I'd be very surprised if Citadels doesn't happen at the end of April, early May. But that's again, that's pure guesswork. But historically, it would make sense.
Exactly, because that's where FanFest is. They want to announce the stuff there. They'd probably say, right, they'll give a ship date or a release date for it, and say it will be released, let's say the 1st of May, just as a stupid date. That's that. And then they go, oh, by the way, the next expansion's going to be this, and that's going to be sort of, winter 2016, maybe spring of 2017, and they talk about it. Because remember, releases aren't going away. We're still going to have the 6-week releases, and to move into another point. This week we had another release this week, and TMC reported on it, and it's new skins, changes, map changes, and more arrive in the January update. And CCP released the patch notes for EVE Online, the January update for this week. Remember, they'll only just be calling them the releases are now this is now the January release, and then there'll be the February release, and they're also going to tie them into the YC number. So this will be the YC 11801 release or whatever it is. New skins, a bunch of new Try on Harder Ink skins for Mimitar ships. Camera changes. This is one I saw. So they've removed the Starfield from the map, increased visible jump ranges and stuff like that. Loads of bits on that. But here's the in-game stuff. Camera will now attach to an item on doing a look at in tactical mode. So if there's a new tactical mode button, you click on, the tactical mode's there, but you click on that and your camera will attach to it in lookout mode. Pressing the orbit camera button while looking at your ship will now activate the chase camera mode for your own ship. Lookout animation speed has been increased by 100%. The camera now stays on target for a few moments after it explodes. It looks nice. Lookout can now be performed at objects far away by doing alt-click and right-click in the menu or the radial menu to activate the item window button. So basically, if you're scanning you want to see a tower that is... I was just undocked from the station that was on my main, and there was a tower off the station at 6,000 kilometers away. I could alt-click on it and go and look at that tower. So that's how it is. Also, here's one that I I heard on, I believe it was Cap Stable this week, or it might have been another podcast. Potentially, it's the new targeting system for capitals. You know, you can, for example, the fighters, you can click and you can mouse over and do like a drag box. You can do that now. So if anyone's out in space, if you hold down Control, left click and drag, you can make a drag box. So you can like lasso select stuff like around, and it will target everything that you put in there up to the amount of targets you have. That could potentially have issues, I think, but I think that's good.
So I've not tried this yet. What happens if you're in the middle of a fleet fight and you have a friendly ship in amongst those red guys? Does it automatically target him as well? Does it only target reds?
Everything. It tries to target everything, and I'm not sure. I haven't tested it on what it targets and when. All I know is that you can target everything that's there. So it's just probably going to go I'm thinking it's going to go alphabetically in the list of everything that's there. It's going to go target, target, target. And when you get to a stop where, like, for example, you're in a logistics frigate and you can only target a maximum of 10 targets or something like that with your skills, it goes, right, 10, stopped. And eventually, obviously, that will be used in the carriers and the super carriers for the new fighter squadrons, because they'll be able to move with things like that.
So it's going to target your own tackle, for example?
Yes.
Yeah.
Again... We'll have to wait to see, because it's now been put in, and again, this will be refined, and there'll probably be some options in there. Because remember, this is the first iteration of this. These are new options as well, so they try the new camera options, or try this. It says marquee select is what it's called. Can lock and unlock multiple targets by holding down Control and marquee or Control Shift and marquee. Alt and marquee will now allow for drilling down into clusters. You can now manually control the field of view camera in orbit mode by holding down Alt while zooming. And it automatically resets. It resets to all mobile by resetting the camera. Oh, and by the way, yeah, you can now fly your ship in first person. There is a first person flying button, which when you do it, you get a little heads up display which targets, and as you turn the ship around. So if you've got if you've set up the controls for the keys and you can fly the ship in first person, because you can do that, you can actually have a good targeting thing. The only problem is your guns are still automatically locked on the target. I think it was Cap Stable that said what they'd like to do is have the ability to lock your guns forward, so they're only facing a reticle in the middle, and you have to line the shot up and go pew pew like that. That would be brilliant. But then I'm just a geek, and things like that would be good, I think.
See, I couldn't. I know everybody got super excited when this first person camera stuff got announced. I could not care less about first person camera. I don't understand why people get excited about it. I don't see. Eve is not a Twitch game, so the thought of being first person in a relatively slow game in terms of combat, in terms of moving your ship around, and that is not something that I don't get why people are excited about it. But everybody else seems to be, so I'm obviously just the stick in the mud.
You're just a grumpy old Scotsman.
Just a grumpy old Scotsman, that's all it is, yeah. See,
Gremel in the chat says, considering how shit their other UI work is, I'm completely unaffected by any of this. Who uses the new map or scanner? 5-10% of people? Well, I use it when I go out and play. I just have a bit of fun with it. The new scanning map, the new map for scanning is amazing. It's so nice. It integrates perfectly fine. But then, as Philisek says in Twitch chat, everyone who uses a wormhole uses the new scanner, and it's about, remember, it's not about making sure that everything is good for everyone. It's these little problems. Like, the map has always been a historically bad problem with trying to scan stuff. You've got to do it here, and then it opens up a separate thing. If you just pulls the map out and you do it, it's about fixing little problems, and that works. I like it, to be honest. I really do.
It's always complicated for CCP because there's always a line at how much, for any particular thing, the map's a great example. How, voice comms is another really good example, actually. There's two examples for you. How far do CCP take in developing it so that the basic infrastructure is in there for new players, and how much do they leave it for the community to develop it properly? Where's the line in the sand? Now, it used to be more of an issue before Crest. I think Crest actually breaks the barriers for that down a lot more, looking forward into the future. But historically, that's been a real issue for CCP. How much dev time do they give to EveSpeak, for example, or the in-game map when everybody, as soon as you know what you're doing, doesn't use those things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there has to be a functional voice system within Eve. There has to be a functional map, but how functional? You know, and I think there's an interesting grey area there in how much time they spend developing that sort of functionality.
Exactly. I mean, to take a thing out of Eve games for a minute and just going to Blizzard. Blizzard have only just started doing voice chat from their games and in their clients. There's always been a little bit, but now they've just started to do it with their Battle.net launcher, and they've been running WoW for 10, 11 years, and CCP did it in game via Vivox, and that it works. It's not great. You can use it out of game. The reason being is most people, Blizzard know and CCP know, most people use TeamSpeak or Mumble or Ventrilo or Discord or any other voice chat client out there. A load of people just use that. They use the stuff that's there. So, and again, what would you rather have? Would you rather have CCP spend, let's just throw a random number out there, 200 dev man hours on making a new voice chat client, or use that 200 dev man hours to fix or to balance, let's say 50 ships, and also balance modules and stuff like that? It's about time and money. That's where it comes down to it, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also the argument beyond the simple money argument. The other argument is that in expecting the community to develop these things, once you've given them the basic functionality, saying, right, this is the absolute base level, you are more than welcome to go and extrapolate on this and do a better job, .land for example, or TeamSpeak or whatever. You're encouraging community buy-in. You're saying, right, you guys work on this, and the people involved are therefore going to be more engaged. You're asking them to work together as a community, and that creates more of a meta, for want of a better word. I mean, not a community, because obviously Eve doesn't really have any communities or anything like that. But,
there's no community in Eve, is it, at all? It's just how it is.
Certainly not on Reddit.
Oh, not on Reddit, and not on any forums or not on any website at all or anything like that. It's just how it is. But no, jokes aside, yeah, Eve's got one. Eve has one of the biggest player-based communities active player-based communities for people who play the game that actually get out there and do stuff, compared to games like Blizzard, like WoW and Diablo and StarCraft, and also other games like SWTOR and Lord of the Rings, RIP Lord of the Rings, but all that sort of stuff, where people just turn up, play their games, that's it. They may have the little niche communities, but they're not out there in the bigger scheme of things, I think. I don't know. I'm just babbling. We've got about 10 minutes left. Let's have another look around the news sites. Eve News 24 had their battle report roundup this week, which is really good. As always, Slavin Harden does a really good job on his battle reports, and he just rounds it up for the week. So he's basically gone out there, and there's a bunch of them. Actually, all of them do have videos, because I've noticed as well, a lot more people are videoing their fights because it makes good content. But a bunch of new battle reports and stuff out there. PL family and NC versus Russia, Red Alliance, Russia and CVA, dank frags and stuff like that, stuff like that. And did he say jump? I love that. I do love that line saying, did he say jump? And everyone just said, no, he didn't say jump. Don't jump. So there's that as well. And obviously, Matani.com has its week in review. Again, similar sort of thing. They do their week in review where they talk about, everything as well. They talk about even line. They have the 209 billion-isk destroyed in Branch this week. 100 billion-isk ships weren't always Titan, or aren't always Titans. There was an Alliance tournament cruiser at a Fiend was shot down this week. There are now 49 Fiends remaining. Check that one off your list. A former PL Legion member had its Titan destroyed by the Imperium. The January update, which we talked about, and an Erebus got destroyed. So a lot of Titan kills. There's been a lot of big capital kills this week, and the Command Destroyers as well. They've been in the game for a month. That write-up was really good. The Command Destroyers in for 1 month, and I've seen a hell of a lot of battle reports and kills, and people saying these are overpowered. The fact that you can just blink people away. I really, really like that mechanic. I don't know about you, Xander. What do you think about that mechanic?
I like the mechanic. I think if you look at the investment required for command destroyers, both in terms of ISK and SP, I think they are very, very OP. I really do. I think that the mechanic's good. I think that given how difficult it is to get access to that tech in the game at the moment, I think they're pretty OP. I think they're going to be nerfed. I think they have to be nerfed
a little bit. I mean, command destroyers. I'm just looking at my Jita. Right, Jita prices. The Pontifex is 44. The Stork is about 54. The Magus is about 52, and the Bifrost or the Bifrost or the whatever you want to call it, the Bifrosty one, about 47, give or take. And again, you know, looking at skill requirements, it requires Destroyers 5, which is a big train, obviously. The Leadership 5 is a big train. I mean, looking at them right now, it'd take 29 days for my DJ to get into a Bifrost. What would it take my DJ to get into a Galente one, because that's what they're spec'd in? It would take, again, 29 days, because I haven't really done Destroyers. But it's the Destroyers 5. And a lot of people go, oh, it's Destroyers 5. Well, remember, it's a Tech 2 ship, so it's going to require a fair bit of things to get into. But yeah, I reckon they're going to be nerfed down a little bit, because they are really powerful for what they are, for the resists. And again, as you said, the ability to just jump and blink a bunch of people away. Oh, and not just a bunch of people, but a bunch of bombs and all that sort of stuff. So you can blink. You could blink anything off, as long as it is.
What I really like about them is they utterly change the dynamics of the battlefield. They totally change how people play. Not only that, there are so many tactics that could be utilised via these command destroyers that people aren't using yet. Like they open up so many different possibilities for how you fight. Like somebody's going to do one of these days. Somebody's going to do something really cool. Like Rooks and Kings, or somebody's going to do something really cool with a bombing run with these one of these times. They're going to do something really clever, or there's so many. Send a suite of bombs on their way, blink them over to the target. There could be some really interesting things that could be done with these. So I love the extra dimensions they add to the battlefield, especially when combined with things like the larger grid size. Now we have a much bigger grid than we used to have. So when you combine those two things, I think it's really interesting. I do think that they are undercosted for the power that they give at the moment.
Well, the costing though only comes down to what the players charge for them, and that's the thing that a lot of people say. Oh well.
I mean, yeah, both in terms of ISK. I mean, let's not be so naive as to presume that CCP don't have a rough ISK price in mind when they release a ship in terms of the cost to build. So I mean, CCP has an idea of what a ship's going to cost before they release it, and there are deviations. They don't always get the predictions bang on, but they know roughly what a ship's going to be based on its production cost before they release it. Exactly.
But no, again, they do bring a new dynamic to the game. They really do. And as you said, I really can't wait for that Rooks and Kings video where they've planned it and it's months in the making, and it comes out. You know what? It'll be Clarion Call 4, won't it? It'll literally will be just like, we're going to bring it out, we're going to do it, and we're going to show you how to school everyone in these changes. And they're going to blink a bunch of bombs in, and they're going to blink themselves out just before, there might be heavily tanked, so they resist some of it, blink out, and then another lot come in, and it's just going to be, it's going to be amazing. And again, that's what the EVE community is best at, doing things like that and bringing it, full circle, as if you like. I'm trying to think. It's been. Everyone said it's been a really slow news week, and it has been a slow. But then again, it's always been slow because CCP have just come back from the winter break, and we're now ramping up for Citadels, and we're ramping up for more information about that. I mean, so I'm happy with the level of things coming out because, that's what happens. I mean, are you happy with the level of, I don't want to say news content out there, Xander, but are you happy with, the community and the way things are slowly moving on, not like chugging on like there's news every day, like a devlog here and then a post here, then scandal here? Are you just happy with the way that things are slowly ticking over?
I think it's always an interesting period of time in the game because now everybody's got Christmas out of the way, New Year's out of the way, and people are kind of settling back into their usual routines. I think this is the period of time where everybody's getting excited about two things. The first is FanFest. FanFest is now, as we speak, 14 weeks away. It's not too far away at all now.
Something like that, yeah.
And in conjunction with that, obviously, the CSM. We're now in the kind of election period, really. The start of, we're seeing interviews start to come out. We're seeing people start to push their particular agendas. I have no doubt at all that people are already in the background trying to figure out what the ballots are going to be for the big blocks, and they're doing their ballot exchanges and all that kind of good stuff. So it's a really interesting period of time politically to watch from the outside, and see what's going on, and also everybody getting psyched about FanFest. So I guess those two things. Well, for me personally, I mean, I've always loved the CSM as a process, whether I was in it or not. I've always enjoyed watching it as a process, and I think this election period and the coming CSM term is going to be amazing. I think it's going to be the best one to watch probably since 6, realistically. And I'm always psyched about FanFest because it's FanFest, and Jeg's coming back with me again this year. He wasn't there with me last year. He's coming again this year, so we're making plans for that. So it's, I mean, that's enough to keep me going for the moment. And obviously, we're going to, over the next coming weeks, we are going to be getting drip fed a little bit about Citadels, I would guess. And that's what, in terms of in-game stuff, I guess that's what everybody's pointing towards at the moment. So I mean, it's I'm happy. I'm satisfied, I guess.
I mean, I planned to be at FanFest this year. I've got the holiday time booked off. I'm not going to have the money. I know that for a fact. Unless I win the lottery before then, but I'm not going to. So there won't be that for me. But maybe next year. But I think that pretty much about does it for this week in New Eden. We'll just wrap up the show now. I'd like to thank Xander for spending his Sunday afternoon with me. He could have done many, many better things, but he decided to sit down with me for just about an hour and have a chat about some things. So thank you very much, Xander. Is there anything you want to pimp, promote? Obviously, crossingzebras.com and the podcast, the 100% CCP verified official best podcast in EVE Online.
100% CCP certified best podcast in EVE Online history.
There we go.
Yeah, I think we're doing another episode this coming week. I think we're due one. When you're not listening to Crossing Zebras, I highly recommend checking out Jeff Rader's show. Also on Crossing Zebras, he's been doing great work on there in the last couple of shows. He's getting better and better at it. He's kind of finding his feet there. Not that he didn't already know what he was doing from shit on Kugu and stuff like that before, but he's got some really interesting guests and that on there, and it's been great fun listening to that. I just want to give a big shout out to Naiden. I don't think people understand or really know who Naiden is, and I think that oftentimes people like myself and Jeff probably get a lot more credit for Crossing Zebras than Naiden, and Naiden runs everything these days. The guy's an absolute fucking genius and an amazing editor, and runs CZ with an iron fist, and so I just want to give a big shout out to him. He's done great work of late, and so thank you very much, Naiden.
Yeah, no, again, Naiden does. I mean, when I met up with him at EVNT last year, I won't be at EVNT again this February. I've just, again, money and moving. I've got the ticket. I'm just not going to have the money to go. So, whatever. I'll have to get that sorted. But no, again, man's a workaholic. He's just a legend out there. And outside of what he does for CZ, and then he's like, oh yeah, I've just done this bit of art and that bit of art. And he's just, man's a legend.
He's amazing. And I don't think a lot of people, really know who he is. He's outside of the work he does for CZ. I mean, you see the odd bit of artwork from him and that, but he writes less these days because he's doing so much editing work over at Crossing Zebras and stuff, but he's not a super prominent member of the community compared to some others, and yet he's doing he's not like a Xander Fina or a Wiggles or a Big Country or a Bob Mon or a Matani. He's not one of those kind of big famous members of the community. Well, Jesus, I'm suggesting I'm a big famous member of the community, which I'm really not anymore. But he's not one of those guys that's out there and shouting about himself a lot.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like other people need to shout for him because he does such great work. So
exactly. No, he's doing amazing work out there. But no, I just want to again thank everyone for listening to this live, either now on Sunday afternoon, or if you're listening in posting the podcast or catching up with the video, twitch.tv/eVideo live. I want to thank Xander for spending your Sunday afternoon with me, an hour. You can always catch what I do here on EVE Radio Sundays from 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. because we now do 2 hours of music, which I don't put out as a podcast because listening to 2 hours of music is like, oh yeah, you've got music for that. Again, everything you need to find out there from the aforementioned Crossing Zebras, but also thematani.com, evenews24, evepodcast.com, all the blogs, all the video cast stuff out there, all the podcasts, all the stuff from CCP put out, totaleve.com. Tiny little bit of a hiccup over the last week or so, where some people were getting false positives saying there's viruses on there and malware. No, it was because the back-end hoster was moving servers from one to the other, and they didn't move it quick enough, and they left both servers online. So one day you were getting one server, the other day you were getting another server, and it was like random. It's all moved now, it's all done. It's the same with Eve Radio, because we all run off the same thing. It's all been moved. And also the daily New Eden update, which I do, coming back officially this Monday. It should have come back 2 weeks ago, and we had some problems this week again with back-end hosting, all that stuff there. So again, all it leaves me to do now is thank my guest Xander. Thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon with me. And
thank you very much for inviting me on.
Dude,
it was very kind of you.
It's a new project. Again, new year, new start for the show. I'm going to try and get someone from the community on every week for an hour just to talk about Eve, whether it be we talk about whatever's going on. If there's any big drama, I might get more people on, but something like that. But again, that's pretty much it for the show now. Music coming up in a bit. I'm actually going to play, if you are listening to live, you will hear off, and again this week, sad news, obviously David Bowie passed away this week. You will hear from the album Black Star, you will hear Lazarus. That is the first song of the show. Amazing album. If you haven't got it, just go out and buy it. Whatever, I don't care what you say, just go out and buy this album. It's amazing.
Agreed, 100%.
It's just a legendary album. So that's pretty much it from us. We will be out of here. Well, we're out of here. I'll see you next week. Take care, fly safe, and if you get podded, remember, you can go to the forums, whine and complain. It gives the ISD something to do, and people might just get a little bit of a laugh out of it. Take care, fly safe.